great to have you here. So back today with another One Piece video. I know I mentioned previously I've really gotten into this game as of late, so wound up picking up the starter deck 14 that just came out today in the US and grabbed this guy. I know I've mostly been playing red as I pointed out in my previous video, but want to learn all the play styles. So this is a black deck specifically. It's an option to play right away as far as what's in the starter deck. As listed on the back, there's 17 types, 14 commons, 2 super rares, and 1 leader. I know a lot of these people typically recommend picking up 2 of them because what comes in this, you can play up to 4 cards of each, and a lot of the best cards, they only give you 2 of these. So most people recommend picking up a couple of these, but because I'm just experimenting for now, just grabbed 1. So with that, let's jump right in and take a look at what's in the box. Okay, now taking a look at what we have in the official deck, starter deck 14 here. I've sleeved the cards for now, but I've not taken a look, so this is gonna be my very first time reading these. As mentioned too, I don't play black, so my very vague understanding of black is typically cost reduction, so this is my first time reading a lot of these, so if I misinterpret what some of these are, please let me know down in the comments below, and maybe point out some of these are actually better than what they come across as being to me personally. So I put these 10 Don, so obviously they come with 10 Don, put them all in just penny sleeves, so we'll just set those aside, but just be aware that you will get those included. And then we have the official deck here of what comes with the starter deck 14. So as mentioned, I sleeved these, but I have not read a single card yet, so gonna be doing this live and fresh with you guys. So starting with the leader here, as mentioned, this is a black deck. We have a 5 life, 5,000 power. We have a strike. I don't feel like they use that enough. Maybe it's just a mechanic that doesn't make sense to implement too much, but the type of characters I feel like rarely comes into play. It does a few times. Let's take a look at what the description is. So if you spend 1 Don, all of your characters gain +1 cost. If you have a character with the cost of 8 or more, this leader gains 1,000 power. Okay. So the goal of this leader appears to be you want your characters to gain cost. So as mentioned, I'm relatively new, but my perception of black typically is they want to do cost manipulation. They want to either increase the cost of their cards in this instance, or they want to decrease the cost of your cards so they can wipe them out or KO them. So I'm trying to think who I played against in black. I played black, yellow, Luffy. Works a little bit differently with that deck. I know Lucci's a popular character, and obviously you have the whole Gecko Moria card that you get included there. So I haven't been as exposed to black as much, but that's kind of why I was interested in the starter deck, and that's why I grabbed one of the other one, starter deck 6, to get more familiarity with how black ultimately works. So as mentioned, this card, all characters gain 1+ cost. If you have a character with 8 or cost or more, you get 1,000 power. So it's really trying to increase the cost of your characters out on the field to make everybody that much stronger, specifically this leader. So cool artwork. I like the Bandai does a pretty good job at the holographic graphics we have on this card. So really like the aesthetic of that one. And then next up, looks like we have 2 of these. So I'm just going to show one of them. As mentioned, frequently they'll give you 2 of the best cards so that you buy 2 starter packs, but we'll just be showing off 1 today. But keep in mind, if you're getting 2 of some of these cards, you may want to pick up 2 packs if you want to get a full set of 4 in your deck. So let's take a look at what we have. Sanji here. So he's a 5 cost, 6,000 power, and as far as his ability, and just to point out too, these are Straw Hat Crew members as well. So we have a Straw Hat Crew leader in Luffy. We'll just set him up here to highlight what the deck is, and another Straw Hat Crew with Sanji here. So on play, if you have a character with the cost of 6 or more, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 5 or less. Okay, so it's very much an on-play mechanic where, once again, you want to have your characters be at a very high cost. You want to have your opponent's characters be at a very low cost. So you want to have somebody 6 or more on your side, and I'm kind of wondering if this card could be included. So if you can get this card to wind up being 6 or more. I don't know if on play, though, that seems like a right-away mechanic. So either way, you have somebody 6 or more on the board, you can KO up to one of your opponents with 5 or less. And as mentioned, black likes to drop the cost of your opponent. So while by default you may not have a 5 or less on the opposing side, you may be able to do something to make them 5 or less. So some of the better cards you can drop down in value and ultimately KO them with this one. So cool mechanic you can use. If you have a good strategy of combining those cost reduction and cost increase on your side, I think that card could work really well. Let me know what you guys think there. Next up, once again, just 2 of these. So we have the Nami, once again, Straw Hat Crew here. A little bit lower cost and power situation. We have 3 on the cost side of things, 2,000 power. And as far as the ability, and once again, we have a 1,000 counter. So Sanji did not have a counter. We have a first counter card here as well. And the description is a blocker, so we have a blocker card here. It's a really low cost blocker, that comes in handy. And on play, if you have 6 or less cards in your hand and a character with 8 or more cost, draw a card. Okay, so 2 purposes for this Nami. Obviously low cost blocker, but then in addition to that, based on what you have in your hand and on the board, you can grow your hand essentially. So that could be a good mechanic if you're playing around that, if you're intentionally putting this out there. Once again, it's an on-play situation, so you need to make sure what you have in your hand at any given time. And so it's pretty much just a hand increaser beyond a blocker, so helpful to pull the cards that you really want out of your deck. Okay, next up we have an Usopp, and this is 4 of them, so this is more of your commons. 3 cost, 4,000 power, 1,000 counter. You can give him a Don, and when attacking, if you have a character with a cost of 8 or more, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. Okay, so similar to the Sanji a little bit, but works a little bit differently. So this can be whenever they're attacking, and you have to give a Don, but same situation where you're requiring you to have a certain amount of cost on your side, and then you can KO opponent on the opposing side. So interesting mechanic there. Moving on, we have 4 of the next one as well. So we have Jinbei, and he's a 3 cost, 4,000 power, 1,000 counter once again. And this is an activate main once per turn. Up to one of your black Straw Hat Crew type characters gains +2 cost until the end of your opponent's next turn. Okay. So, as mentioned before, some of these characters, like the Usopp or the Sanji, require, or I think that the Nami did too, required your character to be a certain cost in order to do some mechanic, whether it's KOing or whether it's pulling more cards from your deck. So this is a card that can help you achieve that, so you can ultimately gain cost of characters on your side that would meet those requirements. So, cool combination there. And then we have 4 Tony Choppers, and this is pretty much just a straight up card, no abilities. So 4 costs, 6,000 power, 1,000 counter. I really like the art on this one though. It's kind of that funny cartoon look to him. Other than the holos, this may be my favorite card aesthetically to this point in time. Then we have 4 Nico Robins. So 6 cost, 7,000 power, 1,000 counter, and on play and when attacking. If you have a character with the cost of 8 or more, give up to one of your opponent characters -5 cost during this turn. Interesting. So there was, I think it was the Nami, somebody previously required your opponent's cost to also be something, and this would be a good way to combine that. So you obviously need the first requirement. So if you played like a Jinbei or something to increase the cost of your character, you could subsequently play this or attack with this, and then decrease the cost of some other character, and then combo that with one of the earlier cards that are helpful when the cost of your opponent is lower. So you can kind of see, most of you probably know how black works at this point if you're watching the video, but you can see how the combinations of this can work when it comes to, as mentioned before, reducing the cost of your opponent's characters and increasing the cost of yours, being able to play certain cards at certain times and just comboing them as much as possible. So we have another 4 of these. I'm gonna butcher the name. I am relatively new to the IP in general and new to the anime, so Heredas, I'll say, as far as the character. So we have 1 cost, 0 power, so 2,000 counter. So right away I'm seeing from the top of the card at least, the counter is his real strength here. And then activate main, you may rest his character up to one of your Straw Hat type characters, gain +2 cost until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then if you have a character with a cost of 8 or more, draw 1 card and trash 1 from your hand. Okay, so 2 ways you can play this. The 2,000 counter is a big thing, just to not have to think too much and just have something available to utilize to balance out somebody's attack. But if you want to play him for cheap, obviously, that's a way to go about him. You're not going to be really attacking with this card. You're going to be doing other things to help your deck in general and just your play style. So you can give up to one of your Straw Hat Crews +2 costs until end of the opponent's turn. So similar to, I believe it was the Jinbei, this is one that you're going to help set up some of your cards. You're going to give your cards more cost. And then once you have 8 or more seems to be the sweet spot with a lot of these cards in this deck. You can draw and trash, so it's hand cycling on top of giving cost to some of your characters. So kind of double effort there, as well as the 2,000 counter, nice to have there. And then 4 more of these guys. We got Frankie. He looks very, very concerned. So 5 cost, 6,000 power, 1,000 counter. If you give a Don during the opponent's turn, if you have a character with a cost of 6 or more, this character cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effects and gains 2,000 power. Okay, so really what I see as the point of Frankie is he is a relatively high power attack, especially if you're giving a Don to utilize his ability, he'd be at least at 7. And beyond that, if you meet the requirements, Frankie's going to stay on your board for a while. So it's preventing getting him taken off the board. If you attack with him and he's rested, they can't do as much. He can't be KO'd, and he gets 2,000 power. So he would have 9,000 power and can't be KO'd if you have a character with the cost of 6 or more. So that is one that I feel like could be really valuable. As I said, I'm not really a black player at this point in time, but right off the bat, that feels like a good attack card that's not going to be easily knocked out of the game. Next up, we have 4 of the Brook. This one's relatively straightforward, no text on the card. We have a 5 cost, 7,000 power, 1,000 counter. So this will obviously be more of your attack type cards and maybe some cost manipulation with some of the previous cards. This could be a receiver of some of those. So not a lot creating with this. This is more just attacking and then being a card to utilize to get some of those costs to where you need it. Like this could be a card that you use to get it up to 8 cost, for example. And then we have 4 of the Heracles. 1 cost, 2,000 power, 2,000 counter. So another 2,000 counter. I think this is our second one of those, so always great to see those. And then activate main. You may rest this character, and I will point out too, I think most of the previous ones have been Straw Hat Crew, but this is one I'm seeing as Bowen Island as the character type. So that's important. Some of the things we saw previously talked about, you have to have a Straw Hat character. I think it was the Usopp or whichever one. Maybe it was no, it wasn't the Usopp. Maybe it was the Nami. One of the ones that pulled, you had to be careful. You have to pull a Straw Hat character. So this one would not meet that description, although this one talks about Straw Hat, so let's take a look. As a 1 cost, 2,000 power, 2,000 counter, activate main. You may rest this character. Okay, so to use his ability, you have to rest him. And up to 1 of your black Straw Hat type characters gets +2 cost until the end of your opponent's next turn. So once again, another character that'll help increase the cost of your cards, helping you use some of those other effects that we've already discussed. So good seems to have a good distribution of cards that are going to get you to have the right numbers, and then cards to be able to use those numbers to your advantage. Okay, we only have 2 of these, so it feels like, I'm not sure, I'd have to take a look at prior decks, but it felt like more commonly you got 4 of each, other than a couple characters and then a couple events, or 1 or 2 events. So this one feels like more so limited, but I may just be misremembering. So here's our big hitters, it seems like. 8 cost. So right off the bat, this meets the requirement of a lot of those situations. 10,000 power. So beyond that, Straw Hat Crew character, if you have a character with the cost of 10 or more, this character gains Rush. Okay. So that could be challenging because this is the only card I've seen to be at 8. The highest I've seen other than that was maybe a 5. It looks like we have a 6 coming up, so there was a 6 as well. So yeah, so the highest we've seen other than this card has been a 6. So unless you're playing both of these, getting a character to a cost of 10 or more is going to be challenging. I mean, you can use some of those other mechanics, so that's going to be the way to really go about it. But you're going to have to use it on a high cost card to get it to 10. But, I mean, you don't have to use Rush. Obviously, that just gives you Rush. So this could be a good finishing card, I would say. Obviously, you're going to need to wait to play it because of the 8 cost. But beyond that, when you have other things down the board, getting 10 cost may be a little bit easier to get into that point. And then you get Rush right away and you try to go for a finishing blow at that point in time. So a couple of these cards. And then we have 4 of these next ones. So we have Ronor Zoro here. We got 6 cost, 8,000 power, and 1,000 counter. Nothing special with these. I like the art style for this one too. This is a really cool looking card. Obviously, as mentioned, the holographic ones are even beyond that, but for just a standard base visual, that's a cool look. And once again, this is similar to some of the ones we had before where no abilities, it's really just high power, high cost, and this may be one of the cards that you get up to 8 or 10 to do some of those abilities on the other cards. All right, so we have 2 of these events. Gum Gum Giant Rifle, 1 cost. So if you may or may not be aware, but this one being a counter, this would be one that you would keep in your hand, and if you wanted to play it, you'd have to keep 1 on Rested Dawn to ultimately use that. So as far as the ability, so if you want to counter, if you have a character with the cost 8 or more, that once again, that's the sweet spot it seems to be on the number-wise, up to 1 of your leader or character cards gains 3,000 power during this battle. So during 1 attack that your opponent has, you can spend 1 Dawn to give your character 3,000 power if you have 8 or more costs. So that's going to be the requirement there. And a lot of these cards gave cost manipulation through the end of your opponent's turn. So hopefully this one's not going to be too challenging to put out on the board if needed. And then the trigger we have here as well. So as I said, most of you guys are going to be aware about triggers. When you have these in your life cards and you ultimately pick them up, that's when the trigger gets activated. You can add up to 1 of your character cards with the cost of 2 or less from your trash to your hand. Okay. So it's redrawing from your trash to either replay or use as counters in the future. Interesting. That may be one that I always try to debate which one's better, the counter or the trigger, as far as if you got the trigger, would you always take it or would you keep it for the counter? That's one I would debate on the situation. I feel like they're both relatively around the same impact to you as a whole. And then we have another 2 event cards. So it doesn't seem like, yeah, we don't have 4 of any events, which, as I said, I believe in at least starter deck 1, you had 4 of all but maybe 1 or so events. So looks like we're only getting a couple of these. And maybe they're giving us more events. That may be the thing, because it looks like we have 4 events in total as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 in prior decks. I'm not positive, but 2 cost situation here. And this is a main of up to 1 of your leader or character cards gains 3,000 power during this turn. Then if you have a character with the cost of 8 or more, KO up to 1 of your opponents with the cost of 2 or less. Okay. So you could obviously play this to kill a card that has 2 or less cost, but really you would play this during your turn when you were doing the cost manipulation and to optimize the card as far as the main effect is. You'd wait until you had high cost and you made the cost of some of your opponent's better cards less. So you can KO them. They may be good to also throw on like a blocker, especially if they have a low cost blocker. And then the trigger, so same situation, if you pulled this from your life, if you have a character with the cost of 8 or more, KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with the cost of 5 or less. Okay, so it is the same thing, just with a cost of 5 instead of 2 as the requirement. So this is one that clearly, I would say, is the trigger seems like the better impact to me personally. I know you get the 3,000 power during this turn, so maybe that's more worth it if you're trying to be aggressive, but playing it for free without having to spend the 2 this time instead of 1, I feel like the trigger is one I would personally prefer. And then we have a hilarious visual there of Luffy very sad about his crew for whatever is taking place there. So 2 of these, once again, 1 cost, and this is one where you can draw 1 card, then up to 1 of your characters gains 3 costs until the end of your opponent's next turn. Okay, so this feels like a clear win of a card. There's a lot of times, a lot of these events, I don't feel like you can play them unless a certain situation arises. This is one that I feel like is a no-brainer. I mean, I guess you want to say you're wasting a Dawn to just pull a card that you're getting rid of this card for, but you're getting pretty much 3 cost for just the existence of this card because you're giving 3 cost for 1 Dawn at that point. And then the trigger, KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with cost of 3 or less. These are a little closer because it's 1 cost. I would say the top part is what I would personally probably prefer, just being able to add cards and then manipulate cost. Those feel like better things to me. Unless you have a situation where you have somebody 3 or less on the opposing side, obviously that's a benefit, but the top feels like more likely to be helpful during the game. And then finally, we have a 1 cost. What is this? It's a 1,000 Sunny card. Let's go to Fishman Island Yahoo. Okay. So another 1,000 Sunny. I know there was a 1,000 Sunny in the red starter deck as well. So reusing that visual here of the ship, all of your black Straw Hat crew type characters gain +1 cost. Okay. And then on play, if your leader has a Straw Hat type, draw 1 card. That is a really impressive stage. As I don't play black, but that feels like something you would always want out there. So obviously you can only play 1 stage that at any given moment. So personally, in the red deck I formed, I've only put one of these in just because I've had it before where I drew both and I was like, I can only play one. There's no point in me having the second one other than using it as a card I can just dispose of if I have to trash a card. But that's not always going to happen. So probably would only throw one of these in my deck if I was putting something together. But that is a good power though. All of your black characters gain +1 cost. Obviously they have to be Straw Hat Crew. Most of these are, so you have to manipulate your deck around having that specifically, but that's just an always permanent thing, which is going to help you get to 8 or whatever number you're striving for in a lot of these cards. So that's going to be huge. And then on play, you can just draw a card if you have a Straw Hat Leader, which you do in this instance with the Luffy. So I think this is a really helpful card to have. It's only cost 1 Dawn. You pretty much, you pull it, I would just throw it out right away and just reap the benefits immediately. So what are your guys' thoughts? As I said, I don't play black personally, but a lot of these cards intrigue me, and I'm definitely going to try out this starter deck. It seems like something that could be fun if you got the right situation that helped things out. Is this one that you guys are going to pick up? I'm not overly familiar with this part of the show, obviously. It's called 3D2Y. I believe that's with like the time skip as far as my brief knowledge, but share in the comments below if you're familiar with the background of the naming there as well. But which of these cards did you like? Are you going to add any of these to your deck? Do you play black? Are you interested in the One Piece game? As I said, I know I'm getting kind of started with this, but was curious, depending on your personal familiarity with the game, where your head's at with this deck and just in general with the game and pulling out of these potentially as far as what you want to play with. So let me know your thoughts down below. Appreciate you guys so much for watching and hope to talk to you again soon.